As we start our presentation, we'll tell you that. So I'll start. I am one of with David, and I think John, what year did you start?
1972.
Okay. 1967, there was 100 of us doing organization development full-time. That was the full way that we got paid. We are the original change agents. There's only about 5 of us still living. Okay, Ed Shine is still living. Okay, so that's who I am. I want to talk about John, Reverend John. He is extremely well educated in OD. He and David both live the values in their life deeply, right? I better say that, okay? So they have a lifetime of thinking about what it means to change organizations. And so I'm honored to be here. I think we're the 3 senior now in Minnesota. I think John and I are. And David's not here, but he was the senior back with us when he was at Control Data, way back there. So here's my message to you. Number 1. Last time I had a personal conversation with Chris Argyris, who I think is the brightest and best theorist in OD that ever lived. He knew Lewin back in the 30s from Harvard. And he says, Roland, your job is this. I want you to help the field of OD keep its boundaries, because we're not everything to everybody. And this book of David, Humanistic Consulting, which I say is the most important book on OD written this century. How's that for a shock? I genuinely believe that. He developed his thesis with Dr. Vail. You know what Dr. Vail is, right? He's the last only pure academic person that's ever lived. He's dying right now on 38th and Bryant, next to my brother. And he started St. Thomas with myself. And so David is Peter's student. And so this is an important book. I put my testimony to it on my blog. All you do is Google Roland Sullivan blog, and it's there. Why this is so important. Next, Dr. James Martin. You can find him, Google him also on YouTube. He says the United States does not have a clue as a country about how to deal with the future. China does. And I do most of my work is international. I'm so sad because I don't even see the United States anywhere. All the big money is going to China, to India, to Thailand, and so the new structures, the airports, the hotels. We're just isolated. We're gone. And so but I do believe that we're the best educated, we've got something that no one else in the world has. And somewhere we got to bring that alive. 4, WST, that's what I invented. It means whole system transformation. It deals with every facet of the organization simultaneously. It has 10 essentials. The paper is on there. Okay? The first essential is, I believe, you cannot... organization change is done, says Chris Worley. It's now transformation. Okay? Change is too slow. Change management, he says, is not relevant. Worley, he did millions of dollars research at USC to find this out. He's one of the big consulting firms, paid for it. So transformation is a leap, a shift, a breakthrough. The caterpillar becomes the butterfly. And it always must start with a leadership team. And they must be transformed first. They must model. And then I believe, we need to work with the critical mass. The critical mass must move. And the way you do that is in large groups. And David, of course, he talks about large groups in here. I like that. why they're important. And the reason large groups went away is because people didn't know how to do them. So they failed. They haven't mastered them, but they're going to come back because they're faster, cheaper, deeper. So that's enough about that. Oh, no. The key is transferring the competence to the internal person. Mi Yang Jung, the OD person in Europe, 7th most influential woman in business in Europe, says the most powerful person in the organization is the internal change agents. That's you, the most powerful person. The CEO, the executives, they're all part of the problem. You have control of the process. Okay? Five. I believe that the best PhD program in OD is at the University of St. Thomas right now. No question. It rivals Benedictine in Chicago. Why it's the best is because it has, Bill went to Pepperdine with me, as did David. David went the year before me. Pepperdine, unquestionably, is the leading global program in OD in the world. The classes are all over the world. My daughter just graduated from there. What a surprise, what a blessing. And so David ran the old Pepperdine program as a faculty person for many years. And now he's taken that model and put it into St. Thomas. It's the only model, it's the only Pepperdine model in a PhD program. And so you're going to have students coming from all over the world. Because you don't go to class 9 to 5. You know, you go in labs. A laboratory is an controlled environment. It usually needs to last days. Residential. Enough of that. So, David talks here about, right, David, about self as instrument. Let me give you one story. Bob Tannenbaum, a friend of David's. Portland, 1978, was in the Pepperdine program. Bob had just had his heart attack, was just starting to talk again. Walked up to the microphone, got a 5-minute standing ovation before he said one word. And in his talk, it was this. He says, I've been waiting for years to give you this message. Organization development has nothing to do with tools, activities, exercises. It's about who you are. It's about how you live your life. And I believe that. We must model what it means to be a transformed person who is achieving perfection in all aspects. So I say, my most important thing I probably got to say to you, find your unique strength. Mine is WST. Blanchard was feedback. Blake was managerial grid. Okay? Marv Weisbord was future search. Find your unique strength. Oh, this is the most important thing I've said since 1969 to every group I've ever addressed. I took it from Warren Bennis, who taught at Pepperdine for us, Bill and David. It's simply this. He said that we are entering an epoch of a dizzying rate of change in his first Addison Wesley theory in 1969. I grabbed that and I spoke about that forever. And I'm telling you, you have and I have absolutely no imagination as to the change that's coming to this earth in the next 10 to 20 years. We probably are going to hit immortality. Across the border, the first computer is right here, implanted as the size of a rice chip. Okay? We will be connected to the cloud, have access to all that data. There will be no disease, no heart disease, no cancer. The 15 diseases will all go away because of technology and globalization and so forth. My daughter, your children will live to be 200, 300, and maybe immortality. And so I believe an age of abundance is coming when we get through this craziness that we have in the earth. The earth is in an adolescent. Okay. This is my new thing. I do most of, my favorite country is India. We have one person from India here. I'm the founder of the Asian Organization Development Network. We're doing whole system transformation for the first time publicly for strangers in Jakarta in a few months. And then we're going to do it again in India. And what they've done is they've grabbed the sacred, the sages and saints and the wisdom of India. India, you know, ran the world before Europe. Okay? And so, what my daughter wants to do, and what they want me to do, because I'm the only person who has been doing yoga, done a daily practice since 1962, and OD since 1962. I meditate every day. Sometimes 5 times, usually I try. When I go into a client now, it's silent, no contact with the outside world. If I'm not talking to the client, I'm in a quiet room meditating. And I get the answers to the system channeled. And I share it with the internal person, or my wife, Maja. So I believe that the transcendent, the sacred, is going to come in. So Chris Worley and I argue, because I'm the competency guru with him and Rothwell. The new most important competency is super intuitional consciousness. Develop it. You can do it. It's going to come easily in these next 10 years. The young people especially, because the vibrations are there. The earth has tilted. It has nothing to do with carbon dioxide. It's the earth changes. Okay, the earth is speeded up. Oh, Maja, give me 3 minutes. Okay, good. Well, I'm doing okay. I'm just about done. So for me, transcendence, the spiritual, I think needs to get integrated with OD. And of course, here's one of the few masters right here. You know, he's a reverend. You know, and Mo, he's kind of spiritual too. So the last one. When Jackie Starvos, our editor for Practicing OD4, she asked every author to write about the earth changes. Oh, maybe a third or a fourth did. But I have shifted now to something that I believe that this is important. We just had $200 billion of destruction because of earth change. 200 billion. In Florida, hey, I went to Tortola every year for years with a client. We did a team building on their sailboat, Polk Audio. He invented his on acid. They were the people who put up the speakers at Woodstock. Tortola is 90% wiped out, I heard this morning. 90% gone. When I was in the Philippines, we saw islands. There wasn't a living human being. There wasn't an animal living. Everything had been destroyed. Okay? Earth changes are here, and they're going to only increase. But the point is this. What the expert, I can't remember his name, I saw him on YouTube the other day. He says what our job is as OD consultants is we must help the people stop living in Florida and on the coast of Texas. We need to collaborate worldwide with everyone to help save human lives and human property, because it's not going to go away like that. Yes, we can make a difference and probably should. Okay? So that for me is a new passion for the first time, that now I'm going to be bold in my old age and say earth changes are important. But the other thing I want to say is the key for you and for me is I try never to talk about religion, politics, philosophy, anything. because when you and I go into a system, we must be neutral. Because as soon as I say I'm for Trump, I've just turned off 40% of the people. Can't do that. They can't know where we're at. Maja says, I gotta shut up, I'm done. Amen. So, who are you, Doc? Are you next or is the Reverend next?
Let's go to David next, okay?
Okay.
Roland, you're looking off to the right. Is there some kind of a slider? I see your head turning. I can't see what you're looking
Yeah,
at.
there's an agenda up on the wall here.
I cheated.
And a screen, a big screen with you on it that we can all
I
see.
don't have an agenda in front of me, so I'll just talk, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time I have.
You got the 7 minutes, 8 minutes.
Um,
Then we're gonna go and have a dialogue with them.
I guess the three of us are here because we're theoretically lived long enough and done this profession long enough to learn something and perhaps impart it to other people, which I believe that's true. We also have our roots in Minnesota. I think they call it, is it roots or roots in Minnesota? I keep losing the dialogue. Anyway, we all come from Minnesota, and I think Minnesota has an interesting kind of a cultural orientation to OD. It comes from the Scandinavian heritage, I think, it comes from a lot of things. I just saw last week a video of three people. Bob Tannenbaum, who most of you know is kind of the West Coast guru of OD. Pat Williams, who is the founder of the Pepperdine program. This isn't a commercial for Pepperdine, but we all went, two of us went there. And Dick Becker. And they were talking about it was the 20th anniversary of the Pepperdine OD program. Interestingly, 5 years later, they're all dead. And I thought about, here's the three of us as Bruce, and trying to impart some wisdom. And we may not be around much longer in the profession, so what wisdom must we impart? I think there's three things. One is, I've been an OD consultant inside, outside. I've been a CEO. I've been made a living in OD related things for 50 years. So I have some battle scars and some victories and some defeats. One thing I learned is the value of marginality. Marginality means that as an OD consultant, you only add value if you see things, value things, have a perspective different than that of your client. If you told your client what they wanted to hear, didn't have the courage, as Pat Williams said, to confront your client early. He called it insult your client early, which means to kind of tell the truth. But you really have to be marginal to the values of you got to be so marginal that you're different, but yet tolerant of the client's perspective and honor their perspective. So I think there's a real value in marginality. How do you become marginal? One is you have to kind of know who you are. I've spent my life trying to figure that out. Who you are, what are your values, what do you believe in, what will you fight for, what do you want to help your client do, what are your politics, and mine certainly isn't for our current president, by the way. So be marginal, know who you are, and the most important thing I think is to have the courage to be who you are in a client situation. Larry Porter, who many of you don't know, he was the original editor of the OD Practitioner, said that we may be the only ones to ask the fool's hard question. We may be the only ones to tell the truth as we see it to the client. It takes a lot of courage to be honest, to be authentic, and to be marginal in an organization, particularly as an external if you want to get paid. So there's a balance between economics and perspective. So I guess that's all I really have to say is that know who you are, work hard to figure out who you are, have the courage to be who you are, and try to be marginal enough to your clients to add value, but at the same time, meet your clients where they are, not where you want them to be. So be tolerant of their viewpoint. It's a tough balancing act, but one that you have to do. I think that's about all I have to say, as Forrest Gump said.
You're a wise man.
Thank you, David.
Go ahead, Doc. Reverend.
Okay, I'll just say a few things. I have been in this area of thought and activity that we call OD since 1972. And that started with my going to my first NTL workshop. And that kind of flipped me upside down. And the irony is that the first one I went to was on Puget Sound in Washington, state of Washington. And I was very efficient, and so I had lined up another workshop for the 10 days after that. So I went home for a weekend, having been totally recooked in this NTL lab. And I went to another one for 10 days. It was on conflict intervention, basically. That was an NTL lab. And I haven't been the same since, I mean, to say it simply. So I didn't do this on purpose, right? I just got snatched up and dropped in a place where I, for the first time, got some feedback from other people about how I affected them, how they saw me, and I learned something about how to talk with them about difficult subjects, and so on and so forth, which made quite a difference. So my wife is the most interesting person to talk about this because she is the one that experienced me for that long weekend between the two workshops and stuff. So I've forgotten a lot of it. She's forgotten none of it. You know, she'll tell you everything about it. I have basically been a professional OD consultant since that time. I worked for another consulting agency for several years, but since then, since 1982, I've had my own business. So part of tonight could be, if we have time, could be talking about OD as a business as well. I had a mentor whose name was Dick Bird, who was a really fine businessman. He was a fine other things too, but he knew how to set up and run a consulting practice, which he passed on to me, basically. Not as good at it as he was, but I'm okay. And so almost everything that I've experienced in OD has been that of the outside consultant. And I've had, I'd say, I have a list of them at home, but I've had about 200 major clients, people with whom I have worked for years, actually, many of them. And then I've had several other kinds of clients where I've just done a little bit with them. So that's my experience, is working with clients as an OD consultant, and its variations, which are a lot. The kind of stuff that I do for each client is based on what they need, what they want, and that doesn't necessarily fall into a definition of what I thought it was going to be before I got there, right? But that's cool. I finally learned, especially David in his book, reinforces this. I learned that that's what this work is. So, you need to give something, present something, need to be authentic and speak truth to power, etc. But you are there because they've got some needs. Whether or not they even recognize them, they've got them. And you with them discover those needs over time, and then you go to work on them. I'm saying it kind of simply, but that's basically the work. And the subject matter ranges from strategic decision making to changing work systems, etc. And then most importantly, helping them talk authentically and from the heart about those same subjects, and to look at how they differ from each other and how they connect and can connect with each other, and then do things like team building and end up doing a lot of work in emotionality. So it's a range of things, and it's not the same for every client. So that pattern is the main pattern for me to get into organizations to be their consultant, is helping them identify what the key subjects are for them, helping them talk with each other about those key subjects, and in a way, in a group process way, et cetera, that works for them and that is honest, and then actually help them deal with their feelings about all of that and decision-making about what they want to do forward about all of that. And it's kind of like each client is different, but that pattern I just described is kind of very broadly, at least true among my clients at least. Which makes things fun. You never are bored with it. You experience things you never thought you would experience. So it's cool. It's a cool way to live. It's a cool way to earn a living, a cool way to contribute. And I'm very happy that I went to that long, ugly 3 weeks to start it all off. I've got lots of things to maybe talk about if you're interested in those subjects when it comes to transferring what we used to do in OD to the current situation, and I'll wait until a little later tonight if we have time to get in some of that. So thanks for inviting me. Actually, Roland invited me first, and then you all agreed to that enough to, some of you agreed to
I
it.
didn't use all my time, John, but let me just take a couple seconds because you stimulated a thought in terms of your wake-up call weekend or week.
Yeah.
I can't see the audience, so I don't know how old you are, but I'm assuming that many of you are not old enough to remember Control Data Corporation. At one time, Control Data was the major employer in Twin Cities. It went from like 50 people to like, I don't know, 50,000 people in 5 years. I was sent by Control Data, I was an HR executive for Control Data, to Commercial Credit, a company they bought in Baltimore. Commercial Credit was bigger and much more complicated than Control Data. When I got out there, I found all kinds of infighting, lots of inauthentic behavior, lots of discrimination, all kinds of problems. And I thought, damn, this OD stuff, you know, there must be some technique to when you got two people who don't like each other to find out how to fix that. And there must be a recipe for team building. There's got to be lots of techniques to do this work. And the Pepperdine OD program just started. And so I went out to Pepperdine to get a master's degree in OD, looking for technique. I was looking for a recipe book. How do you do team building? How do you do third-party intervention? How do you do process work? And they just beat the hell out of me when I got out there. Because their mantra was, you are the instrument, don't look for a technique. And I said, I'm not the instrument, give me a technique. I paid $50,000, I want to know what it is. And so I was sort of the punching bag the first year I was out there. But then I went to a T group, NTLT group, and like you, John, suddenly I discovered a whole sense of myself, perspectives that I had, and I found, yeah, I am the instrument. It's me being who I am, not relying on technique. And techniques are good, and instruments are good, and surveys are good, but they're just means to an end, and that end is to help the client using your unique skills. So I just wanted to share that punching bag experience that I got on Pepperdine.
Yeah.
And I think John was your client, right? No, he consulted you.
When I worked for Control Data, it was about the time the place was imploding. And John, I also worked with Dick Bird a lot, but I can't remember if that was before or after, but yeah, someone hired John to do a team building session for the HR executives. And I don't know whatever happened, I think the whole thing just fell apart, but not because of the culture.
I thought it was really successful.
It was, the company didn't have any money.
I think we're done. You've got the script. What's next?
The next is that we're going to turn it over to the audience and have them talk about what you talked about and see if they have questions for you. Do you want to put any more detail to that?
No, that's perfect, right? That makes sense, right?
Okay.
Sure.
So what is your reaction to what you heard? Would you like to talk about it in groups first, or just go ahead and raise your hand? Groups, okay.
Yeah.